is this one because 50% of families called us when they were already living in a senior living community. So that means they'd already gone through all the hoops to research and find a place, but that place was no longer working. And so, for various reasons, they would call us and say, my mom's already at an adult family home, but that adult family home's not working. Or my mom's already at assisted living community, but that place is no longer meeting our needs. So, the most common reason for a community to a community transfer was because care needs increased and that community could not keep up. A next reason was financial constraints. So, rising costs, maybe they're living longer than anticipated and the facility is not going to be able to take Medicaid. And so they had to call us and say, hey, we can no longer afford this. We're going to have to move. So that was a big reason why people called. Dissatisfaction with the care, communication issues, staffing changes, quality concerns. And there was a little bit of where they're like, we're already in a care facility. There's nothing wrong with it, but we need to move mom closer to us. And then sometimes there were actual ownership transitions, closures, or policy shifts with a community, and that caused someone to call and say, hey, this place is no longer what it used to be, or it's actually closing. We have run into that. So that was very enlightening data for us to look at. And that was actually, it kind of makes me sad because moving again is really hard on your loved one, especially with dementia. And with every move, there's a cognitive hit. It's really disorienting and it's just a lot of stress to move again. So we like to try to avoid that, of course, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Now, we also looked at the data and what was overlaid with all those hospitalizations and falls and other things I mentioned is the hidden triggers. And those are the behavioral things that aren't as obvious on the surface sometimes. So they were hallucinations, agitation, aggression, resisting care, nighttime disruptions, and paranoia, those kind of things. Behavioral changes are often the moment that families realize something has to change. I will share a memorable story with you about this is there was a lady who had her husband at home with dementia and they were holding off as well as they could. It had been already over a year since his diagnosis. And one day, well, he started accusing her of having an affair. And this happens quite a bit. He also started accusing her of stealing money. And one morning, this woman woke up to the very startling sound of, so imagine yourself in bed, and a leaf blower, the sound of a leaf blower goes off. Her husband was standing over her at the foot of the bed, pointing a leaf blower at her, and that startled her to a waking point. And she's just terrified. It was a horrible way to wake up. And so his agitation and his paranoia about her having an affair and things had come to that point where the leaf blower was that wake up call that caused them to say, you know what, this has got to change. We can't, he's no longer, I really don't feel safe anymore and I'm scared of him and we got to move. So that's an example of a hidden trigger. I have a lot of other examples and I'm sure some of you do too. So what this often looks like is that the data repeatedly showed us that spouses, daughters, sons, and people caring for loved ones often carry the load for longer than what is sustainable. Caregiver burnout is really real, but families often minimize it. So if this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Family members piecing together coverage, no longer you feel like you can't leave that person safe alone anymore. Increased nutrition and weight changes, increased nighttime issues, isolation. And the biggest takeaway from this is that in dementia cases, home often becomes unsafe before families are emotionally ready for that. And that's a really hard thing because there's going to be a misalignment. You're like, I'm not ready to move this person, but it becomes unsafe. And so the needs increase silently over time, and the emotions just can't keep up. So emotional readiness and a person's safety timeline are often not aligned, and this is it's just really hard. So we've identified what the problems are. So one thing that Alice and I were just talking about, and that I really want to stress on this slide, is that it is so important to involve the person with dementia or that you're caring for, maybe it's some other form of cognitive decline or issues going on. It is so important to have conversations with them and involve them to the maximum point possible and as early as possible. So, you're just going to want to start having small conversations over time are better. It's not about just one big conversation. And um, here's some things, here's a sample, a list of questions, like just to get you going. So, if living at home becomes unsafe, what do you want us to do for you? Who should make decisions for you if you can't? Where are the key documents and information? Tell me about your childhood, your relationships, your proudest moments, and your regrets. And is there anything you don't want us to do for you? That one is a good one too. And sometimes get some laughs. This is so important because I'm going to explain on this next slide that there's something called the planning window. And so, as you can see over here, we're talking about decision-making capacity for a person. And early in dementia, decisions that need to be made are low. But as time goes on, the decisions that need to be made grow and grow and grow, and you have to make more and more and more decisions. At the same time, that person's decision-making capacity or ability that started out high, it's going to go lower and lower and lower. So you get this big cross that is, and as soon as it kind of crosses over to the other side, they're not going to be able to be involved in those decisions anymore. But there's going to be a ton of decisions that need to be made. So I like this visual and hope that that will stick with you. So the best time to plan is earlier than you expect. And it's really great to involve the person as much as possible. Even, I could say, we'll get into it, but I have ideas for you. So, what does planning actually look like? And that can be a big word. And we think of elder law attorneys and we think of financial advisors and we think of, kind of big things where you're sitting in an office and you have to pay some money, right? So, but planning ahead can be just as simple as starting early conversations while your loved ones still can participate. Going to drive that one home. Making a wish list with them. Like, what kind of place would you like if you had to go somewhere someday? Would you want to make sure I go with you if you're husband and wife? Or would it be okay for you to go by yourself? That's a big one. What kind of ambience do you like? Do you like woods and nature? Do you like lots of light? What kind of food do you like? Do you want it to be close to your granddaughter so she could visit? Start talking about what that what they actually want, a wish list. Make a wish list with them. And who do you want to be involved? And those are the types of questions that could be on the wish list. Actually, go out and visit a few places to get a feel. Anyone can do this. There's no cost, and you'll even get a free lunch. So I really do recommend visiting a few places way before a crisis. Just get out there. You can be like, hey, there's this new restaurant in town. Let's go check it out. And then you get an understanding of real costs when you go and you get a real feel for the place because that's really important. We have a conception of what it's like, but until we actually go and experience the microculture of a place, we won't really know what it's like. And then, of course, visit and revisit your legal tools like your powers of attorney before capacity declines. And just a note about power of attorneys, I was talking to my friend who's a elder law estate planning attorney, and she said, make sure you name an alternate agent. If you have not named an alternate agent, Just make sure to do that because things can happen to the primary person that you named. And then to avoid going to the court to get someone else, a court proceeding would have to result in a guardian. You can avoid all that by having a secondary agent named. And we don't need to get into powers of attorney, but there's different types. And if you have any questions about them later on, we can talk about this. Here's one other tip about powers of attorney. Don't name kids as co-agents. Like if there's three children, don't give them all three equal power because if they're all three equal power, then it's going to be really impossible to get things done. You might have to have all three signatures on everything. What if they really, really don't disagree? That's just going to be spinning their wheels and fighting, and it's really hard. So just wanted to mention that too. So that's what planning can look like just to get you started. And then like as soon as you get your feet wet in it, that kind of like one thing leads to another and you start gathering more information. Your binder gets bigger, your knowledge gets bigger, your power gets bigger, your peace of mind gets more. And so now we're going to transition into what are the best types of places for dementia. And there's different care types that fit specifically with dementia. We're not going to talk about retirement today or the large continuing care retirement communities that have all continuing a continuum of care all on one campus. We're going to focus in a little bit on home care, assisted living with memory care, standalone memory care communities, and adult family homes. And we'll start with in-home care here. And so this is, personal care, meals, medication reminders, and companionship that can come in. One thing that's kind of a precursor to in-home care, if you haven't done that yet, but you think you might need to eventually, start bringing people into the house now. So if you don't have a housekeeper, get one. If you don't have a yard person, get one. If you haven't utilized physical therapy or occupational therapy, talk to your doctor. Maybe you could even get that for your loved one. Start getting people coming into the house so that it's not going to be such a shocker when a caregiver comes someday. Even ask your friends to stop by. Hey, can you just stop by and see my mom or dad or, or my spouse or, just get people in the house to kind of normalize this idea of somebody coming in. And yeah, there are agencies. I really recommend going through an agency. You can find an individual caregiver as well that can be great. There are some challenges with that. And if you have questions about it, we can talk about it. Like taxes and payroll that you would be managing yourself versus an agency is nicer because if the caregiver doesn't show up one day, they can get backup for you and they take care of all the payroll and the taxes and everything. And then you can see kind of some data on the price these days here in the Seattle area. There are just a few companies that will do like a 1 hour shift that we know of, but there's usually like a 3 or 4 hour minimum. All right, now we'll get into the care communities. And this is just high level. We're going to talk about these three different types of communities. And really, it often comes down to what types of behaviors that can be accommodated in each place, such as exit seeking, and then care level. So when you've seen one assisted living, you've seen one assisted living because they all have different scope of care that they can do. They're all different. And nighttime care, social compatibility and culture fit. And sometimes things like even diabetic care, one can do better than others. They all have different nursing hours. So if you have a real medical situation, some can handle that a lot better. So we'll start off by talking about assisted living. And I'm just going to stay high level because I'm going to save it for your questions because we could spend all day on this. So assisted living has 24-hour caregivers, 3 meals a day, help with care, social opportunities. And what's great about assisted living, especially when it has a memory care wing, is that it's there for when your needs are going to increase to the point when you need memory care, and then you just make an internal move. So if you start out with a nice apartment in the assisted living area, you can transfer onto the memory care wing if and when that becomes needed. And what'll cause that transfer a lot of times is exit seeking. So if the person starts being a wandering risk where they're going to start going out into the street, they might sit down with you at the community and say, hey, this, we need to move to the memory care area. Or it could be dignity issues. Like if someone starts to derobe in the dining area, it's going to be a bigger deal in the assisted living than it would be in the memory care area. And yeah, in the Seattle area, there's over 130, just kind of greater Puget Sound. There's a lot of assisted livings with memory care wings. And they're great for couples because you have different needs. You can, maybe one goes to the assisted living only and the other one doesn't. So we can talk more about that. I know you have questions. Cost really depends on the care level. I helped someone move to an assisted living the other day for $3,400 a month, but that was in a very independent kind of minded assisted living. They didn't have memory care. If you're getting into memory care, you're going to be 8 or 9 easily. There's one that starts at 7,500 on the east side that is actually assisted living with memory care. But you're easily 8 to 9 plus per month as soon as you start getting into these communities. I like assisted livings with memory care because some of them have what's called a transitional floor for those that are not quite ready for the full-on memory care yet, but they're like, and they're still kind of social and aware. And there's more opportunity for social compatibility in the transitional floor. So that's kind of a really neat thing about the assisted living. And next we have dedicated memory care communities. It might not seem like something that you would think of immediately, but a lot of these are all one level, and that kind of matters. And I'll say that because I had a situation with a gentleman who actually tried to climb out down the balcony from one level to the next level. And he was just really able-bodied, and that was really scary to have someone climbing on the outside of a building. So all one level is good. It's also nice just because the outdoors are so accessible in the all one level kind of place. And then a lot of them have larger outdoor areas and they have nice big wide hallways and they're great for roaming. They're great for preserving dignity because everyone's in the same boat. And you get all the good things, the 24/7 care and 3 meals a day and all the support you can need. So we can talk more about those. Um, There's only 10 that accept Medicaid from day one, or 20 of them that accept Medicaid after a 1 to 3 years of private pay period out of 60 of these dedicated memory care communities in the Seattle area.
Hey, Abby, I'm going to pop in just for one quick question because
Yeah,
people on the call are from all over the place.
yeah,
I would imagine that your numbers probably translate pretty equivalently to other geographic areas.
that's probably true. Yeah, it's just that a lot of places when they do memory care, they just are not, they don't do Medicaid in combination with that very often. And so it's just tough. And so that's where the adult family homes come in for many reasons, but that is one of the reasons why adult family homes, 50% of them will accept Medicaid either from day one or after a private pay period, which is really phenomenal. So adult family homes are personal residential homes. They're scattered all over the place. There's 4,377 of them right here in the greater Seattle area, and there's about 5,300 of them in the state of Washington. Oh, closer to 6,000 now, actually. They've just keep opening. We track it, and they're opening like 7 of them per week. So they just keep opening and opening. But these are great. You do need to, I think this is where really placement agencies really shine, like us, because we keep track of them and their track record and help you evaluate them, which is hard to do online. But, anyways, we'll talk about that. They're just really smaller. It's home-like. They can prevent falls so much better than other settings. It's a family that's paying for you, right there in the home sometimes with you, creating a family environment. A lot of them are run by nurses or even nurse practitioners. and can really specialize in dementia. There's this fabulous one, Lakefront Senior Living. I'll give a shout out to her. She's a nurse practitioner. Dementia is her specialty. She knows how to. So I asked her this question: what do you think is the most important thing when evaluating an adult family home and whether it's a good fit for dementia specifically? She said, honestly, it's the tolerance level of the staff. Like, are they trained in dementia and can they tolerate this amount? And what she said is that there can be a 2 to 3 month adjustment period for someone with dementia who's just been ripped, from their family home into a place like this. It's going to take a while. And she said that the homes that know what they're doing, they're passionate about it and they're willing to stick it out. And they have a high level of tolerance for behaviors. And I was like, right on, you're just so awesome. And she has so many success stories about how she has stuck it out for that transition period of time. I've heard it called transition trauma, and it's really a real thing. And so that's why assessment is so important of the person and working with a home who really knows what they're doing. They have experience in this and they're engaged, they're on site, they're not just stopping by once in a while. A nurse that's really engaged is really important. Asking for references is really important. There's a lot of things we could talk about it all day. So, evaluating care communities, look beyond first impressions, ask questions that really matter. And here's just a little sampling of this. I today have for you a handout with a list of questions to ask for when you are evaluating a care community on your own. And we're going to get that to you. But look beyond first impressions. How do they communicate is so important. And how often? I have so many nightmare stories. One person recently told me their mom had an incident where they slammed their toe. They had a motorized wheelchair and they slammed their toes into the wall with it, and it had to go to the ER. Ended up getting admitted into the hospital because they had broken toes. The family didn't get the call from the facility the whole time. And this is a really bad example. I mean, this hardly ever happens. I don't want to say it's happening all the time. But they got a call from their mom on Sunday afternoon, and she's like, I'm back from the hospital. And they were like, what? The community didn't even call the family to tell them that she had gone to the hospital. So she went the whole hospital experience without her family even knowing. How they communicate is really important. Now, that's an example of a community that's really struggling with their staffing numbers because I know which one it is. That's what like everyone's always like, staffing matters. This is how it translates. They won't be good at communicating with you. Things will fall through the cracks. They won't call a proactive care planning meeting with you. You know, it will be could be disastrous. So how stable is the staffing is really important. Do they have a visiting doctor? Um, is really great. There's a lot of assisted livings. There's a lot of adult family homes now that have visiting doctors and psychiatrists that they work with that come in and they work really in pair with what's happening in the community and review. There's a certain document called the Disclosure of Services. This is a way to compare apples to apples with assisted living and memory care communities. It's like the fine print, but they have it ready for you. They all have this document, Disclosure of Services. And it says, I can do this type of care, yes or no. I can do this type of care, yes or no. And it's just great because then you see where their scope of care is and where their scope of care ends, what they can't do. And so then you can anticipate, okay, well, if my loved one needs someone to spoon feed them someday, which is likely, they actually can't do that there. So that's not a good fit for me. So it's really interesting to gather that disclosure of services document and review it. I love this question. Ask for examples when a resident had to move out. This is where reality is. Like, where were you at your limit? When did they have to move out? And then really ask about their training, experience, tolerance level for dementia challenging behaviors. And if they get annoyed by your question, that's a red flag. already. They should be excited and passionate to tell you, not annoyed that you're asking these deep level questions that nobody else is asking. So that's some of what I have to say about that. There's so much in eval, we want to look at their enforcement letters as well and all kinds of things. The good news is you don't have to figure out everything today, but you want to involve your loved one in conversations early, make a wish list with them, and even start capturing their legacy. Just talk to them about what's important to you, what was important to you in your past, because even what was important in their past informs what's important now. So start having conversations. Maybe you already are, which is awesome. Understand your options and actual costs, and that's where we can help you. There's lots of different professionals that can help you, or you can just go out and have a free meal, which is awesome, and they'll give you a packet with the real prices. Align your key decision makers as best you can. And if you have trouble with that, care managers are amazing at helping. Even placement agencies can be really great at helping talk to different people one-on-one and get everybody aligned. Review your legal tools and seek a professional care assessment. One thing I think I would have done with my grandma's care looking back, because I would have had one of these nurses that I know. I know tons of nurses that do these independent care assessments. It's really comprehensive. You can hire them for $400, $450 to do an assessment for you, and you could keep it. You could do that with no intention of moving anytime soon, but it would be a very helpful tool because it would be like, here's all the needs in one place, and that can become their care plan. And then that can become a baseline too. So I would take advantage of those nursing assessments if I could go back and do it. There are a lot of professionals out there that can help you with this. And referral agents can kind of be like help you find out the inside scoop on places that you might not know otherwise. And we are accountability. I think this is important. A referral agent acts as a accountability because they hear what the facility promised to you before you moved in on day one. And so just to revisit the question that we were asking, when is the right time and how do you know where you're going to go? You really have three options here. Option one, and then I'll be done with what I'm going to say. But option one is really start gathering the research, start going out to places, maybe even get on a wait list or two. And you've done some awesome work there. Put it in your back pocket, and you've done some incredible planning. Um, and then maybe make a move-in date and actually move before a crisis might happen. Option two is do all that planning, but then just wait for a triggering event because a triggering event might happen and force it. And option three is don't do any planning and wait for a triggering event, and then you'll just be in reactive mode instead of proactive mode. So that's it. In-home care can work, and we can get into that more. I know you have maybe some questions now, and I wanted to open it up for discussion.
Abby, thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind stopping your share, you're on top
Hmm.
of it. So, I invite people to ask questions. You can either raise your physical hand or raise your electronic hand or just shout out.
Hmm.
I did see in the chat, Danny asked, do you perform caregiver burden assessments?
That's a really good question. I do not, but I could find out who does. And we could give you an informal one because we do talk to families all the time about that very topic. And so we would be happy to discuss that with you, but it wouldn't be like a formal thing. It would just be kind of, let's talk about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll also include in the email that you get as a follow-up with this, there are also resources available online
Hmm.
to do like standardized caregiver burden assessments.
Yeah.
And so, just like you talked about getting a baseline with the nurse coming in and assessing your loved one,
Yeah.
assess yourself. And then you
Assess
can assess
yourself.
yourself in 6 months and assess yourself in 6 months. And you can watch your own numbers change.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talked about in our meeting with Tipa today was the importance of also having the caregiver get cognitive testing from time to time to set baselines. And that's maybe one of the ways that we know sometimes that we are actually living in caregiver burnout is because our cognition is so impacted by the life that we're living. So,
Mhm.
um, all right, so let's see,
Yeah.
Phyllis, you had a question about how do you guide families whose family members are resistant to the conversation of transition?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I'd so sometimes whose family members are, so you're talking about family members who are resistant, not the person themselves.
No, the person themselves.
Oh, the person themselves. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the person themselves is resistant. Um, you know, that is a really tough one. And it's just, I mean, I'm just gonna say it straight up. It's really tough.
Yeah.
They're gonna make a move somewhere and they're not gonna be happy. And it's gonna be really, really hard. But sometimes in those cases, you're kind of beyond the point of being able to have those conversations. And I think what's really important is to realize that if they were earlier on, that they probably wouldn't be like that, and to release yourself from some of the guilt of that,
Yeah.
and then do start doing some research and empower yourself with what's actually out there and what the costs are. And then do try to bring the positives about to them in different various ways. I definitely sometimes involving the doctor is really important and other voices other than your own
Mhm.
because they're not going to want to hear from you on it maybe anymore because that door is really slammed shut tight.
Yeah, sometimes the doctor saying it is better than the family member, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually even sometimes somebody like a third party professional, whether it's a care manager or different types of professionals, you can enlist their help as well. And hearing it from somebody else might soften it. But it is very difficult and it's just a long journey to walk sometimes. And unfortunately, that is someone where sometimes it'll have to take some sort of triggering event where I've even, if things get really, if things are really, really unsafe and they're really, really resistant, I've even had people say, take them to the emergency room, like
Hmm.
just take them in, because if their safety is a huge at risk, you have to all of a sudden stop um, caring so much about their resistant and their safety has to override that. And so sometimes it's just taking them into the hospital or taking them in. There's also the geriatric response team, GRAT team here in Seattle that can kind of be helpful for some of those more severe situations. Geriatric regional assessment team, and they'll come out and assess your loved one. There's different types of professionals that can really get involved if it gets more severe.
Yeah. I just want to add to that a bit and anything that you can do to avoid getting to that stage is why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
I realize that for a lot of people in the room, the ship has probably already sailed. Like you're beyond having the like, what would you want if one day you need to move out of the home
Yeah.
conversation? And that's harder. And I didn't have that conversation. I wish that I had. Um,
Mhm.
what really worked for me was getting the doctor involved because the
Mhm.
doctor was able to talk to my husband and say, look, I'm really concerned about you, Evan, and what you need is the place that's going to be the healthiest for you and your brain. I mean, Allison means well and all, but what you need is professionals who
Mhm.
can really make sure that that you're the healthiest guy for as long as possible. And living at home, that's not the way to do it. And he listened to her. I
Mhm.
also know people who have been successful having somebody else
Mhm.
talk to the person with dementia and say the equivalent of, I know how much you love your wife,
Yeah.
and I'm watching what's happening to her,
Okay.
and maybe you can't see it, but the amount of effort that she puts into loving you and caring for you is really killing her.
Mhm.
It would be
I
best
think
for everybody
also,
if you guys separated. and let her just be your wife again and visit you and spend lots of time with you and have coffee with you and love on you without needing to also help you with all of the day-to-day stuff that she's currently doing. So different tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's one thing that I've experienced with some folks I've worked with is the guilt of changing the circumstance for their loved one. So that's why it takes so long because they're so resistant in, well, my dad's dementia isn't that bad. Yes, he just hid my mother's purse for 4 days, but or he was lost, but they're feeling so guilty to put him somewhere that it just continues. So I do like the suggestions of the doctors and some other people other than family members having that conversation, but it's convincing the family as well to say,
Yeah.
you've got to do this now, right?
Yeah.
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 Something else to think about there. Um, I have met people who went to long-term care earlier than a lot of people would probably encourage their loved one to go to long-term care. And what I saw is that they became a part of a community and they
Yeah.
created friendships and
Yeah.
they developed meaningful relationships with people. And so the thing, if you move somebody when they're already at a point where their dementia is very, very advanced, they miss that opportunity.
Exactly.
And I don't want to go into a whole big long spiel about it,
Yeah.
but I do think that it's, as much as we harbor that guilt of, oh my God, but they never wanted to leave the family home. Well, okay, so let's just be pragmatic about it. You can't take care of them any longer,
Yeah.
perhaps. And wouldn't it be better if they move into a place where they can have opinions about what the food is that they eat, where they can maybe even help, like let people know, can we please have grilled cheese with bacon twice a week, or whatever it is, and where they can start doing activities. Sometimes, if you have a sense of where they're going to go when the time is right, you can start going there once a week for lunch, or you can start going there and participate in some of the activities. So there are ways to kind of ease in if that's something that could be acceptable to your person.
This
So
is
good.
Madeline. And I had an opportunity for 2.5 years to take Larry, my husband, into a facility for lunch every Wednesday,
Mm,
noon to 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I would drop him off. They understood him. He understood the whole premise, this situation. And then when it came time to have him go there permanently, he already knew the
Mhm.
facility, the people, and so on. And
Yeah.
that worked very well.
That's so good, Madeline. And
yeah.
I had it in my notes, but I was trying to get through everything. I definitely am a huge fan of day stays. Whether it's just for lunch or it's officially once or twice a week, stay for a day. Some communities will do a day stay. And then the day programs that are out there as well. That's so good that you did that because that just it was eased the whole thing. It eased the transition. I love that so much.
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
like the converse to what you were saying earlier, Abby, which I really liked about starting to bring people into the home, whether they're
Hmm.
coming here to help with the garden or they're coming in here to, so that when somebody is coming in to help with your loved one, it doesn't have to be about the fact that they're here to help with the loved one. I know for in my case, I invited a friend I told my husband that she was out of work and she really needed something to sustain her, and that I was going to have her come into our house and start prepping dinner so that I could, because I was working at that point. And that's, of course, not really why she was there. And he never really saw that she wasn't actually prepping dinner, but she was instead just like taking him out for lunch. So,
Nice.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. And I want to touch on what Anne, do you want to chime in here? And if you don't, I'll read it.
Hmm.
There
Sure.
you are.
Yeah. Been, looking at a couple moving pieces. Um, my mom has been in assisted living for 5 years after lots of traumatic things. And there's like the memory declining, and then there's the finances declining.
Mhm.
And knowing that she's going to need to pay more and more, and at what point might she really not be able to stay in assisted living without deeper memory care. There's a tolerance they have, but I want to be prepared. And at that time, it might coincide with needing to apply for Medicaid.
Mhm.
So how is that something you mentioned a wait, like trying to get on a wait list or two, but when, how,
Yeah.
some of your
So if
thoughts?
Medicaid is in the future for you, it is ideal to really I mean, ideally you would be 2 years out and you would start some certain types of planning. And then you would revisit your plan 1 year out and you would
Mhm.
revisit it 6 months out. But in terms of moving, if the place where she's at really doesn't accept Medicaid at all, and the sooner the better,
Mhm.
because there's certain places that if you move, now you're going to have this many options. If you wait, you're going to have this many options. If you wait longer, you're going to have this many options. So because there's the windows where they have a 2 year private pay, a 1 year private pay, a 6 month or a direct Medicaid, there's only, this many options. So
The memory care facilities in Los Angeles are like double what she's paying now. So then it means like it'll be a year, less than a year, you
right.
know, versus maybe she's okay for another couple of years, or maybe she never has to move. I mean, this is the
Yeah, and so elder law attorneys are really great at helping you plan. And also, I don't know what you have in your area, but here we have something called Sound Generations, and you can meet with them and they're going to help you plan for the timing of the application and when you should be doing certain things a few months out, and really excellent support through. So I'm sure there's an equivalent of some sort of organizations that can help you with some of that planning. If there's not a lot of assets, you don't really need an elder law attorney to really help you necessarily because they're kind of moving things around. But yeah, there's going to be some organizations that can help you. And here in Washington, if you were here, I have a list of assisted living places that take Medicaid, and we share that with people openly and we update it on a regular basis. So, but maybe there's also some other
Yeah, the
resources.
equivalent of an Abbey in LA. And just so
Yeah.
yeah.
everybody's clear about this private pay piece, so we did move into a Medicaid community eventually. However, they required that we private pay the full rate for 18 months. So at the time, memory care was charging us 11,000 a month. The care community that takes Medicaid was charging 7,500 a month, and we had to pay 7,500 for 18 months before they would then let us do Medicaid.
Yeah.
And the law is supposed to be that if they take Medicaid, that they can't ask you for any money. They just have to take what Medicaid gives you, and you hope that Medicaid gives you the maximum. But again, in our case, they said even though you're getting maximum Medicaid, it's still not enough money for us. So it's kind of against the law for us to ask you for more money. So what we're going to do is tell you that we need supplemental money from you to pay for the special foods that he eats. So I had to come up with $1,500 a month still, even though we were on Medicaid. So just like buyer beware. That it's not as simple as it seems. And these are just great things to understand now, so that if you encounter it, you'll know what the language is, you'll know what people are talking about. Yeah, it's tricky stuff.
I really wish that assisted living communities especially would every single year evaluate their clients' financial situation or their residents' financial situation and like, hey, we got to sit down because it looks like, mom's really spending down and we can't keep her. Like if they were helped. So I'm so glad you're on top of it, and but I think it's like the onus is on the community as well to not just spend you down to your last dime and, anyways, it's
Yeah, because I've asked, I just I mean, it's been nagging at me about when is the right time for her to have some more support. And I've been thinking, do I get home care help in the assisted living, private, again, private pay. But the staff there think that she's fine there, but it's not trained dementia care
Yep.
people, right? I mean,
And
some
yeah,
are, but some aren't. That it
yeah.
just,
It's worth you starting to look around and figure out what the Medicaid options are in your area.
yeah. And something, it would be amazing, right, if it were nearby, which
Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be nice? I know.
Yeah.
I honestly, at one point, considered moving my husband to the Philippines. Um, all right, Karen is making a suggestion that you find a geriatrician as a primary care provider for your elder family member because geriatricians are much better trained in aging and dementia than regular primary care physicians. This made a big difference in caring for my mom and getting her to understand and accept that she could no longer live independently in her home and made her transition to assisted living much easier. Geriatricians are great. Um, and they have that extra layer. They're doctors, right? But they have an extra layer of training in how to support our aging population. David is wondering, Anne would like a copy of your list, Abby, to help support people in her rural community. And we'll send that out to everybody. It won't be meaningful to some people, but it will to others. David, who's in Houston, asks whether you can recommend a company like Silver Age in Houston.
Yes, I can. We do have a network of people who do referrals and placement all over the nation. And so we can help you find one. There's some trusted ones that we work with in the Houston area.
Should Dan just reach out to you directly via email, Abby?
Yeah, that would be great.
We'll make
Yeah.
sure that your email is in our is in the email that I send out as the follow-up, which will
David
also include a copy
Richardson.
of your
Okay.
deck and will include
Yeah.
the recording. Although I started the recording a little bit late, but we captured 95% of it.
Yeah, great.
Um, okay, we are Bill, I'll be right in there.
Yeah,
We
that's
are
fine.
approaching the end of our time. Um, Abby, I learned a lot today. I thought I kind of knew um, I do know a lot, and yet at the same time, you added some little tidbits that I think were extremely helpful. I do know people who are in this room who are very early on in their caregiving journey and are already having conversations with the person that they support. Meaningful, like open, let's
Mhm.
just accept the fact that there's dementia going on we want to make sure that we always have the best care possible for you. So let's talk about what that looks like. And I'm so happy when I meet people who are approaching things that way. I'm not sure who's shared their screen, but maybe I
I think
can.
it's Gail Cantor
Oh, okay.
says.
Let me go here. So I wonder if anybody has any final questions before we um, close our call out today. Thank you. Any last questions?
Yeah, any questions on pricing? We have so the handouts we have for you, we have a price comparison sheet of at home versus the community. We have early signs to look for someone and things to be watching for when they might need to think about transitioning. And what else do we have?
Explain the comparison.
Oh, the price of living at home versus the price of care at a community. At a community, so many things are included. And at home, you have all these different utilities and other things. So it's interesting to compare those two. And yeah, we've got a couple different handouts. So
Um,
excited.
Abby, Allie asks whether there are any Canadian in Ontario, any agencies like yours. Do you have international connections or are your connections primarily US based?
I have got a good one in Mexico if you need dementia care in Mexico. He's actually really passionate about it. It's more affordable and it's high quality, he says. But in Canada, I'm not so sure, but I can find out and I will. I'll get back to you, Allie, on that.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what's coming up next. So we next month we have Jennifer, who Martin, who's been with us before, is coming to talk kind of nuts and bolts of dying. And I know that that sounds like a really depressing topic, but I think it's a topic that everybody, it should be a part of our education culturally. We should understand how to be with people as they're transitioning out of life. And the reason that I specifically wanted that one is because I felt like in the moments when my husband's end was near, I found myself completely like I didn't know what to do. And I thought, what, I've had how many years to prepare? And I never thought about this moment. And so I thought that for other caregivers, that maybe you can have a benefit that I didn't, which is to understand that moment, especially when you're caregiver at home, you've been working with hospice, they've given you morphine, and they're like, just administer morphine. So I still believe that I actually killed my husband with morphine um, because I had no idea what that dosing was supposed to be and so on. So I don't want you to go through that. So if you'd care to join us for that session, that'll be great. That's coming up in April. In May, I'm going to be doing a session about sexuality and dementia. Then in June, we are going to have an amazing woman who's going to be talking about anosognosia. And so, for those of you who have heard that word before, we often will talk to caregivers who say he's completely in denial. Like he just doesn't believe he has dementia. Okay, is it that he's in denial, or does his brain, because of anosognosia, actually have no way of knowing that he has dementia? And so she'll be talking about the difference between anosognosia and denial. How do you know which it is? How do you support a person when they're in that state of not understanding or believing that there's anything that is not quite right with them? Then in July, Dementia Careblazer, Natalie Edmonds is going to be coming on. And I'm super excited about that. And I haven't yet figured out what she'll be discussing, but whatever it is, it will be rich and juicy, and we'll all learn a lot. And I would also put out to you that if there's a specific topic that you would really like us to cover, or a specific expert that you would like us to bring in, I am more than happy to try and scratch your itch. So just let me know what it is. So that said, you will be getting an email from me in a few days with all of these resources. Abby, oh my gosh, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank
I
you. And
really appreciate you.
there was one question we missed that said, what do you do about drinking and smoking? And I just try not to too much. I'm just
Wait,
joking. I'm
oh,
messing.
wait, what?
I say do more.
Oh,
What's
smoking
your
and drinking and assisted living.
Yeah. It can happen sometimes if there's like an outdoor space and good and doctor's orders are sometimes needed for the drinking part for sure. And sometimes they can accommodate that, or there can be non-alcoholic beers. So one person had their cigarettes at the front desk, and they would give them to her at the front desk, and she would wheel out in the parking lot and go with her. Anyways, they can manage it sometimes, but it's going to be limited and safe and good for you and not, you know, messing with your medications and things.
Well, and also for other residents who might find those things offensive,
Yeah,
I would imagine that there's some degree of
absolutely.
sensitivity around that.
Yeah.
Anne says some have you pay extra for a smoking assist. Oh, and I don't know if Barb is still in the room. Barb, you had asked, I made a note to myself. Where is it? You said recently began using Zinnia, live in a wonderful continuing care community, not sure how. And I didn't there. Oh, can you unmute, Barb? By pressing that little microphone audio button at the bottom of the screen. Let's see if we're able to help you with that. Let me see if I can go in here for 1 second. Let's go to Barb. More. Okay, let's ask. You may have just gotten a request to unmute from me, Barb. Let me try that one more time. And I'll tell you what, in case we aren't able to communicate about this right now, you can send me an email, Barb, and I'd happily answer your question. We'll do that. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Okay, bye.